The hidden alleys of the Crystal Bazaar were alive with a restless energy that night, a pulsating heartbeat beneath the waning moon. Ilara moved cautiously, her footsteps muffled against the polished stone floor that shimmered with a faint iridescence. Every stall seemed to flicker in and out of existence, the magic sustaining them trembling like a candle in a gust of wind. She pulled her tattered cloak tighter, feeling the weight of silence around her, not just the silence of her lost voice, but the heavy, suffocating hush that wrapped itself around the market as dawn crept closer. The artifact she clutched in her palm pulsed softly, an inner light that throbbed in time with her racing heart. Its secrets teased her, whispering promises she could almost grasp but never fully hold. She knew time was running out. The bazaar was a creature of the night, and with the moon's slow retreat, its magic was beginning to unravel. A sudden shift in the shadows caught her attention. From the dark folds of a nearby alley, a figure stepped forward, draped in a cloak so dark it seemed to swallow the faint moonlight. The figure's face was obscured, but their voice was unmistakably a low, echoing whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Ilara," the voice breathed, sending a chill down her spine. "You tread on dangerous ground, weaving threads of forbidden magic. The price is far greater than you imagine." Ilara's eyes narrowed, searching the shadowed face for clues, but the figure remained indistinct, a shifting silhouette blending with the night. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the silence that had bound her for so long held firm. The shadowed whisper continued. "The bargains made here are not mere trades. They are chains binding soul to market. Your artifact is a key, yes, but also a lock. Beware what you release." Before Ilara could react, the figure melted back into the darkness, leaving her alone with the fading glow of the artifact. A tremor of fear mingled with determination surged through her. She was closer than ever to reclaiming her voice. But the warnings were clear. This path was fraught with peril, and the cost might be more than she was willing to pay. As she pressed onward, the bazaar itself seemed to shift beneath her feet. The narrow corridors she had memorized twisted unpredictably, stalls disappearing and reappearing like phantoms. The murmurs of other patrons swirled around her, some bargaining in hushed tones, others fleeing shadows only they could see. At a crossroads, she found Lyral waiting, her green eyes sharp and alert. Though their alliance was uneasy, forged from mutual necessity rather than trust, Ilara welcomed the company. Together, they navigated the labyrinthine market, exchanging silent gestures and urgent looks. The weight of unspoken words pressed heavily between them, both understanding that the ticking clock was a threat none could ignore. Lyral motioned toward a stall bathed in a cold blue light. Mirrors lined its walls, each reflecting not the physical form but the fears and desires of those who gazed upon them. Ilira's gaze met her own reflection, silent, voiceless, burdened by the curse she had yet to break. The image flickered, warping into visions of consequences yet to come. "The bazaar tests us all," Lyral's eyes seemed to say. "We must be cunning, or we will be consumed." Ilara nodded, gripping the artifact tighter. The magic within her hand pulsed more urgently now, as if sensing the waning night and the approaching dawn. Around them, the crystalline structures that gave the bazaar its ethereal beauty began to crack and shimmer, strands of magic unraveling in the chill air. Every step brought new dangers, shadowy figures lurking just beyond sight, whispers of deals gone wrong, and the ever-present risk of losing more than what she had already sacrificed. The lines between friend and foe blurred, alliances shifting like the market itself. A sudden clatter echoed as a nearby stall collapsed into a cascade of sparkling shards. Patrons scattered, their faces masks of panic and desperation. Ilara's heart pounded as she realized the market was fracturing, the spell holding it together weakening with each passing moment. "We must hurry," Lyral urged, her voice silent but her expression clear. "Before the bazaar fades, and with it, our chance." Ilara nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. The shadows around them twisted, whispering promises and threats alike. She could feel the weight of the forbidden magic pressing against her soul, urging caution but demanding courage. As the first hints of dawn tinged the horizon, the crystal bazaar shimmered one last time, a breathtaking, fragile beauty hanging between night and day. Ilara knew this was her moment. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and mystery, but she would not turn back. With the artifact pulsing in her palm and the shadowed warnings echoing in her mind, Ilara stepped forward into the shifting shadows, ready to confront whatever the fading magic would reveal. And as the moonlight slipped away, the silent promise of the night hung heavy in the air. The cost of reclaiming what was lost would be greater than she had ever imagined. The crystal bazaar pulsed with a restless energy, the flickering lanterns casting dancing shadows across the winding alleyways that twisted like serpents beneath the moonlit sky. Ilara's bare feet brushed against the cobblestones, slick with a faint, silvery dew, her heart pounding louder than the distant tolling of a forgotten bell. The weight of the artifact nestled close against her chest was a constant reminder of the price she had paid her, price that now demanded answers. She moved with purpose through the crowded stalls, past merchants hawking wares that shimmered with enchantments and curses alike. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices, ancient parchments, and something darker, something unspoken but ever present. Her eyes, sharp and searching, sought the figure who had first tempted her with the promise of lost things restored. At last, she found him, the merchant who had woven words like silk and concealed truths beneath a hood of midnight blue. He stood in a shadowed alcove, the faint glow of a single lantern illuminating the sharp angles of his face and the silver embroidery that traced constellations on his robes. His eyes met hers with an unsettling calm, a knowing spark flickering within their depths. Ilara stopped a mere breath away, the silence between them heavy with unasked questions. She tried to speak, but the curse still held her voice captive. Frustration burned in her chest, yet she forced herself to remain steady. Instead, she raised a hand, fingers trembling slightly, and traced a slow arc through the air, a silent plea for truth. The merchant's lips curled into a faint smile. "So, you seek answers," he said softly, his voice a whisper like the rustle of silk. "But answers come at a cost, and the Crystal Bazaar does not deal in simple truths." With a fluid motion, he gestured to the table beside him, surface carved from dark wood, inlaid with shifting silver patterns that gleamed like liquid moonlight. Upon it lay an ornate board, intricate and alive, its surface shimmering with countless moving pieces. Each was a miniature relic, a symbol, or a figure that seemed to pulse with an inner light. Ilara stepped closer, eyes widening as the pieces rearranged themselves in a slow, hypnotic dance. She saw reflections of herself, fractured and multiplied, some triumphant, others broken. It was a game, the merchant explained, but one with stakes far beyond mere victory or defeat. "Every bargain made here," he murmured, "is a move on this board. Each choice, each trade, is a thread woven into the tapestry of fate. You are not merely a player, you are a piece, and the game is far older and more complex than you realize." Ilara's gaze hardened. The weight of her sacrifice, the silence she bore, suddenly seemed a fragment of something far larger and darker. She gestured emphatically, her eyes pleading for a way to reclaim her voice without surrendering her soul. The merchant regarded her with an inscrutable expression. To take back what you have lost, you must understand the rules that are never written, only lived. The bazaar tests your cunning, your courage, and your willingness to pay the true price. He extended a slender finger toward the board, where a small, luminous piece pulsed with an eerie glow. This artifact you carry is but one key. There are others, hidden and intertwined, each bound by bargains forged in desperation and desire. Alara's mind raced. The path ahead was no longer just a quest for a stolen voice, but a labyrinth of shifting alliances and perilous choices. She would need to outwit the bazaar itself, to play the merchant's game on his terms, and find a way to turn the tides in her favor. The merchant's smile deepened, shadows flickering across his face as he leaned forward. Are you prepared to wager more than you ever imagined? To gamble not just with your voice, but with your very essence? The question hung between them like a blade's edge. Alara's silence spoke volumes, her resolve forged anew in the crucible of the bazaar's merciless magic. Outside, the market shifted again, stalls vanishing and reappearing as if breathing. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled midnight once more, marking the hour when bargains are struck and fates rewritten. Alara took a deep breath, steadying herself for the game to come. The merchant's eyes glittered like stars caught in a storm, but behind them lurked secrets she was determined to unravel. Tonight, the Crystal Bazaar was no longer just a place of forbidden commerce, it was a battleground where the price of silence would be paid in full. As the first tendrils of dawn threatened the shadowed sky, Ilara's gaze never wavered. The game had begun, and she would not be the one to lose. The moon hung low and heavy over the Crystal Bazaar, its silver light filtering through the translucent veils that draped the shifting stalls. Alara moved cautiously, her steps muffled by the soft ground beneath, each breath a silent prayer she could no longer voice. The weight of her voicelessness pressed down on her more fiercely than the exhaustion etched into her limbs. Grasping the crystalline orb artifact that had cost her her voice, she felt it pulse faintly, as if alive with a heartbeat not her own. Around her, the bazaar hummed with the murmurs of unseen deals and whispered secrets, but for Alara, the silence was absolute and suffocating. She spotted Kethril ahead, his silhouette outlined by the flickering lanterns hanging from crooked poles. She hurried toward him, desperate to communicate, but her attempts were met only with strained gestures and puzzled looks. Her hands shook as she traced frantic symbols in the air, but the magic binding her voice seemed to tighten, responding almost to her will with invisible chains wrapping around her wrists and ankles. Kethril's eyes widened as he noticed the faint shimmer of enchanted chains, their delicate links woven from threads of silence itself. "Ilara," he whispered cautiously, leaning close despite the risk. "Those bonds are more than mere magic, they are a curse tied to the artifact you carry. Breaking them is no simple feat." Her heart thundered in her chest. The realization that the artifact was not just a tool, but an anchor to her silence, filled her with a mixture of dread and determination. She squeezed the orb, feeling a surge of energy ripple through her veins. The chains responded, tightening momentarily before slackening, as if testing her resolve. As the night deepened, the bazaar's shadows lengthened and twisted, and from one of the darker stalls, a figure emerged. The shadowy merchant who had first sold her the artifact stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with an inscrutable light. His voice was but a breath, a whisper that seemed to echo inside Alara's mind. "Breaking the silence chains," he warned, "will come with a price far greater than losing your voice. There are forces bound within that artifact, ancient and restless, Unleashing them could unravel more than just your curse. Alara met his gaze steadily, the silent fire in her eyes speaking volumes. "I have little choice," she signed urgently, her fingers trembling. "To reclaim what was taken, I must break these bonds, no matter the cost." Kethril nodded slowly, his expression torn between hope and fear. "Then we must prepare, for the chains are not merely physical. They are woven of forgotten magic, and the path to freedom will test every part of your being." Together, they sought a quiet alcove deep within the bazaar, where the flickering light barely touched the walls lined with relics and forbidden tomes. Alara sat, the chains shimmering faintly as they wrapped around her. Cold and unyielding, yet somehow fragile, like glass threads spun from silence itself. As she concentrated, the artifact pulsed brighter, filling the space with a soft blue glow that danced like ethereal flames. The air thickened with tension. The silence around her grew oppressive, pressing into her skin, her bones, her very soul. She could sense the artifact's spirit stirring within, restless and eager to be freed. Memories flickered behind her closed eyes, echoes of a time before the curse, before the voiceless nights. Faces she once knew, voices she longed to hear again, and the heavy price paid in shadows and silence. She knew the chains were not just barriers but guardians, keeping something dangerous locked away. The weight of the choice settled on her shoulders. To break the silence and risk awakening forces she could neither predict nor control, or to remain bound, a prisoner of her own bargain. Her fingers brushed the orb again, steadying her trembling hands. Outside, the bazaar shifted and shimmered, its magic a living, breathing entity that watched and waited. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sounds of footsteps and whispered deals carried on. Oblivious to the quiet storm building within Alara. With a final breath she could not voice, Alara steeled herself. The chains glimmered like strands of moonlight, fragile yet unbreakable. And as the first tendrils of dawn threatened the night's dominion, she prepared to shatter her silence, no matter what darkness it might unleash. The bazaar seemed to hold its breath, and in that suspended moment, Alara's journey took a decisive turn, one that would test the limits of her courage, the strength of her heart, and the very nature of the bargains that bound her. The night was far from over, and the true price of freedom was yet to be revealed. The crystal bazaar thrummed with a darker energy as Alara moved deeper into its shadowed corridors. The soft glow of enchanted lanterns cast long, wavering shadows against the crystalline stalls. But tonight, the usual allure of magical wonders was tainted by an undercurrent of desperation and fear. Alara's footsteps were muffled against the smooth stone, but the tension in the air was palpably. Whispered bargain seemed to carry a weight heavier than mere gold or silver. In a narrow alcove, veiled by a curtain of shimmering beads, Alara found herself face to face with a figure who exuded an unsettling calmness. The crimson merchant stood draped in flowing robes, dyed a deep, blood-red hue, embroidered with intricate arcane symbols that pulsed faintly with power. His pale face was marked by an eerie serenity, his sharp eyes gleaming as he regarded her with an unsettling smile. "You seek to reclaim what was lost," the merchant intoned, voice smooth as silk, yet edged with something colder. "I can offer you a shortcut, a means to retrieve your voice swiftly, but such gifts are not without price." Alara's heart thudded painfully in her chest, the memory of her voicelessness a raw ache. She nodded cautiously, her eyes locked on the glowing vial the merchant produced from beneath his robes. It shimmered with a liquid light, promising power and restoration. "What is the cost?" she asked silently, frustration and hope mingling in her gaze. "A life, or rather a freedom," the merchant replied, his smile widening. "Another patron's bond, severed for your gain." The words hung heavy between them. Ilara's breath caught as a rush of images swept through her mind. The faces she'd glimpsed in the bazaar, haunted and broken by their own bargains. Could she take from another to save herself? Before she could respond, a sudden commotion drew her attention to a nearby stall. There, a gaunt man with pale scarred skin and trembling hands was speaking urgently to a small crowd. Ilara edged closer, recognizing the desperation etched into his features. "I was foolish," the man said hoarsely, voice rough with emotion. "I made a bargain here, paid with my blood and my daughter's laughter. The price was more than I could bear." He was Morin, a patron who had once sought the bazaar's power and lost more than he had bargained for. Ilara listened as his tale unfolded, how a deal sealed in desperation had cost him his family's freedom, leaving scars that no magic could heal. The sorrow in Morin's eyes was a mirror to the darker possibilities of the bazaar's bargains. Ilara felt a pang of empathy, her resolve hardening. She could not become the instrument of another's suffering, not even for her own salvation. As she stepped away from the crowd, a gentle hand touched her arm. Turning, she met the worried gaze of Lyra, a fellow traveler who had often shared cautious words and quiet companionship. Lyra's eyes, lined with concern, urged patience. "There are other ways," Lyra whispered, her voice steady despite the bazaar's ominous presence. "This place feeds on desperation. If you give in to the darkest offers, you lose more than your voice." Ilara nodded, drawing strength from the fragile alliance. Together, they moved deeper into the bazaar's labyrinth, where whispered warnings mingled with the distant clinking of chains, a reminder of the stakes at hand. Eventually, Ilara found herself standing beneath a shimmering archway, its facets reflecting myriad versions of herself, each fractured and distorted by fear, regret, or ambition. The weight of choice pressed down like a physical burden. To take the shortcut would be to bind another in silence and shadow. To refuse meant prolonging her own suffering, but possibly preserving the fragile humanity within the bazaar's grasp. Her hand closed tightly around the artifact she had traded her voice for, its pulse a steady beat in the chill night air. With a conflicted resolve, Ilara stepped forward, her path uncertain but her conscience clear. The bazaar's voices echoed, a chorus of bargains made and broken, as the night deepened around her. This choice would shape the rest of her journey, testing her courage and compassion against the merciless tides of forbidden commerce. And as the crystal bazaar shifted once more, Ilara knew that every bargain came with a price sometimes paid in blood. The night was far from over, and the true cost of her quest had only just begun to reveal itself. The pale glow of the crystal bazaars, myriad lanterns, cast kaleidoscopic patterns on the ground as Ilara settled herself within the quiet confines of a forsaken stall. The air was thick with lingering magic, a hum that seemed to reverberate through the very stones beneath her. In her hands, the shimmering artifact pulsed faintly, its surface alive with intricate runes that shifted and danced like liquid silver. She cradled it as if it were the last fragile link to her stolen voice, the one thing she longed to reclaim above all else. Moonlight filtered through the translucent crystals overhead, fracturing into countless shards of light that scattered across Ilara's face. Her eyes, sharp and resolute, traced the patterns etched into the relic's core. The artifact was unlike anything she had ever encountered, both beautiful and unnerving, as though it harbored a secret that whispered just beyond reach. A soft, almost imperceptible vibration thrummed through her fingertips, growing steadily stronger. Ilara's breath caught as the runes began to glow with an inner light. threads of ethereal energy spiraling upward like smoke in a silent breeze. The air around her seemed to thicken, charged with anticipation. Without warning, a sudden flash of light erupted from the artifact, bathing the stall in a radiant glow. From within its depths emerged a figure, ephemeral and shimmering, an ancient spirit bound to the relic itself. Its form flickered between shadow and light, a swirling mass of translucent hues that shifted with every heartbeat. The spirit's voice was at once alluring and chilling, a melody of whispers that echoed through the quiet market. "I am the keeper of lost words," it intoned softly. "The voice you seek lies within my grasp, but freedom demands a price." Elara's heart pounded fiercely as the spirit's gaze seemed to pierce through her very soul. It revealed that releasing it would restore her voice, but bind her to an unknown fate in entanglement with the Bazaar's ancient magic that could neither be undone nor escaped. Torn between desperation and caution, Elara reached out slowly, fingertips trembling as they hovered over the artifact. The weight of her choice pressed down like the heavy night air, thick with the scent of exotic spices and the faint trace of ozone from lingering magic. Around her, the bazaar seemed to lean in, the stalls shifting imperceptibly as if watching her struggle. Reflections fractured in the shards of a nearby mirror, each shard capturing a fragment of her conflicted expression, hope mingled with fear, determination shadowed by uncertainty. The spirit's whispers grew more insistent, promising release and renewal, but warning of bonds unseen. Minutes stretched like hours as Elara wrestled with the decision. Every instinct screamed to grasp the chance to reclaim what was lost, yet the shadow of the unknown loomed large. The market's magic pulsed in sympathy, a living entity entwined with her fate. With a resolute breath, Elara's fingers closed around the artifact. The spirit surged forth in a cascade of light and sound, filling the air with a chorus of ancient voices. A searing warmth blossomed in her throat, spreading through her chest, and suddenly, the silence that had gripped her for so long shattered like glass. Words her own voice spilled free, raw and trembling, but unmistakably hers. Yet beneath the triumph, a lingering echo of the spirit's warning whispered through her mind. A reminder that every bargain at the Crystal Bazaar demanded its toll. As the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, the market began to dissolve like mist, the magic fading with the night. Elara stood amidst the fading stalls, the artifact quiet once more in her palm, and a new resolve kindling within her spirit. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but she had taken the first step toward reclaiming her destiny. And somewhere deep within the shifting heart of the bazaar, unseen forces stirred, watching, waiting for the next move in the eternal game of bargains and secrets. The night was ending, but Elara's journey was only beginning.